Welcome into the Bassmaster Studios, and it's time for another Bassmaster Elite Series Skype session. And on the phone with us today, the guy who took home 2 Elite Series titles in 2019, none other than Brandon Cobb. It didn't take you long, Brandon, to get that nickname, 2-time champ. You knocked that out pretty quick for the Bassmaster Elite Series for your debut year.
Yeah, the year started really, really good last year. Better than, I just was happy to be on the Elites. And then when I won the first one, I was like, holy crap, didn't expect that. And then it happened again. So it's kind of a blur for the first half of the season.
Well, we obviously wanted to touch on that. You got your year started off great. You had a great St. Johns River event. We saw you on day 3 in the coverage and just missed that final day. Then you go to a Lanier, and then you jump over to Hartwell, one of your home lakes, a place that you've spent a lot of time. Did that tournament play exactly like you thought it would? Because you were on them from day one, led wire to wire, and it seemed like it was in your wheelhouse, but I know it's not always as easy as it looks.
Yeah, no, Hartwell last year was like, I guess the tournament did play exactly how I thought or dreamed like I wanted it to, but practice wasn't really that good. Like, I didn't know that I was going to catch them. I wasn't on them necessarily. But the other thing to that was I'm so familiar with Hartwell that I basically didn't practice anything that I would like go to my confident stuff, what I would always do in tournaments. I did all kind of other stuff, fish different parts of the lake where I have caught them, but not my go-to when I've fished Hartwell for years. So that I didn't really know I was on them, but they could have been there all week, and I just never fished for them until the tournament.
Well, it obviously got tight that final day. Stetson Blaylock, Micah Frazier, some of those guys were really putting some pressure on you. And it's very interesting to me. We get to see it on Bassmaster Live, the specific areas of the lake that play. Sometimes with Elite Series events, it's a pattern over an entire lake, and we see a lot of different places factor. For certain lakes, it's a specific region. And for y'all, it seemed like it was the Seneca River, or the Seneca River up there above the bridge. It seemed like you guys were all in those couple creeks. Why did that area of the lake play so much compared to down at the dam? If the tournament was a week later, maybe the down at the dam would have played more. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind, to be honest. I mean, I fished that arm a lot, but mostly just because I lived up there for 5 years of college, and when I would go before class, after class, or sometimes skip class, when I would just go for a few hours, that's where I fished. So I was just really familiar with it. But I've been fishing Hartwell for, 20 years, and out of tournament fishing there for 10 to 15, I fished that arm a lot, but it's never I'm not saying it's not good, but it's one of the toughest arms to compete in tournaments with. It's hard to catch big bags up there. It's probably easier to catch solid fish, but hard to catch big bags. Majority of tournaments are usually won elsewhere on the lake. I think it just lined up this year with this past year with the cold weather to where the fish were. That was one of the only arms they were biting in at the time. When the fish are biting in the whole lake, it's tough to win up there. You can do really well, but it's tough to win.
It's kind of like that makes me think of the St. Johns this year with Paul Mueller winning up there on the north end of the St. Johns River, where, hey, when it's tough, that place can get away with winning, but if it was on fire, that Lake George area is going to be very hard to compete with. So with that Elite Series win, you were very comfortable with your season. You got started off on a great foot. My thought going into the final day for you, when you have a lot of experience on a lake, sometimes you take unnecessary risks or you try things out because that's a little deal that the Carolinians do that happens sometimes. And on that final morning, you seemed to go for a crazy topwater bite, something you hadn't really caught any fish on all week, and it didn't pan out, but how do you do that with the pressure of having the lead and guys chasing you down, just fishing a random pattern for the first hour or two of the morning and having nothing in the box on a championship Sunday?
Yeah, it was that last morning. It was the herring had started spawning. I knew it was close, and had been kind of waiting on it all week, and it was one of those things, there was a lot of pressure and I needed to catch them early, but I really hadn't caught anything before 11 all week. So that was actually kind of a way to try to dodge the pressure, because if I had ran into that one point and caught 12 to 14 pounds, that was, the day, not that that's all I needed, but if you start with 12 pounds in the first 45 minutes or 2 hours, then there's no pressure hardly the rest of the day when I already had such a big lead. So that was kind of why I went to do that, because I wasn't catching anything early, and that was one of the quickest ways to put a limit in the boat if I'd ran into it. That just happened to be one of those things where the herring were spawning, some stripers were up there, but there was no bass yet. But growing up on herring lakes, I just know how quick it can happen when that starts.
My hook's tangled.
So unlike the 2019 season, normally, Brandon, you don't get to fish around home in April. Last year, you got to fish right there at Hartwell, and then you got to go over to Winyah Bay and stay in the state of South Carolina. But for you this year, with this break, not being able to travel for the Elite Series, you've probably been able to do a lot more fishing around home. What's it been like for you, just fishing by the seat of your pants, just doing whatever, places you don't get to go this time of the year?
Yeah, it's been awesome this year. So what I've been doing, I actually, coming off of St. John's this year, I had a decent tournament there, not great. I finished middle somewhere. But I kind of wanted to get back to, honestly, in the last year and a half, 2 years, I haven't fished if it wasn't a tournament. I've basically fished tournaments, come home, rest for a couple of days, and then go fish, travel to fish another tournament. And I actually was looking forward to just in the couple weeks we were supposed to have off to get to fish home, and now it's turned into a lot longer break than any of us wanted. But what I've been doing this year is I fished a lot of these lakes around here, but I've been trying to fish them differently. I'm real familiar with everywhere around here fishing, but I've been going to parts of the lake that wouldn't be my staple this time of year because all the South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina lakes, they got fish everywhere. So I've been using this time to kind of learn. No matter how long you've been doing it, you can still learn things. So I've been going to a part of the lake where if I was fishing a tournament on Hartwell, say right now, I would be fishing that Seneca River arm, where I've been going up a different arm or going to the dam or just doing stuff different than I normally do and trying to learn not necessarily new techniques maybe, but learn maybe a different way to catch fish that I don't do in the parts of the lake that I'm real familiar with. So that's what I've been trying to do in these last few weeks. Like I went to Clark's Hill 3 days ago, and went way up the river and fished places I've never fished. Didn't catch them very good, but that's one of those things that you don't know if you don't try it. So this gave me an opportunity to do that.
Transitioning over, you had your first Bassmaster Classic experience. Probably wasn't maybe the tournament that you were hoping it'd be, but it's got to feel great to get your foot, on that Elite Series or on that Classic stage and to kind of break the ice. And now that's probably going to set you on fire to try to make every single one for the rest of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely was not the finish I wanted. I just kind of missed it that week. It's not a tournament you want to miss it in, but at least it didn't hurt me for points because it's kind of a win all or it doesn't matter tournament. So I definitely swung for it, just fell a bit short. But yeah, the Classic, honestly, doing so poorly this year gives me even more of a drive to come back next year and qualify again and do well in that one. It was one of the cooler tournaments I've ever fished. The show was unbelievable, just how big of a tournament it was. It was a stressful week with everything we had to do, but it's something that, even though it was a poor tournament for me, it's something you won't forget. So I look forward to getting back as soon as I can, hopefully next year.
So for you, Brandon, what was the first Classic experience you ever had? Was it one of those Hartwell Classics in the past? That was your first time going to one, or had you been to one prior to even competing this year?
So I don't think, up till I fished pro, I'd never been to a Classic. Obviously, I watched it every single year. I remember when it was live coverage the whole time, I'd watch it. I remember basically every Classic since I was 10 years old I've watched, but I think the last 4 or 5 years I've been there and working shows and everything like that when I was fishing the FLW tour. So it's one of those things where I've always watched from the stands or watched from the expo and just didn't understand the scale of it until you fish it. You can't. You see it, you see what goes on and all that, but until you fish it, you don't understand the show it is.
Well, for you, you just mentioned fishing the FLW Tour. You mentioned fishing in college at Clemson a couple years prior to that. Walk me through the story of Brandon Cobb, how you got to where you are now from the local trails, I guess. In high school probably fishing, if you fish with the men or any of those local trails to the Carolinas, and then getting into college and doing the early stages of college fishing, because you were just before when I fished, and then now all of a sudden you're a pro that had made the Forest Wood Cup every year, and then you made the Elite Series and the Classic.
That won't help.
Yeah, so I'll just start. My tournament fishing started. I was actually talking with my buddies the other day, and his son fished his first tournament at the same age I did. And my first tournament I fished when I was 7 years old, and I caught a 3-point .13. I don't know if it's 13 ounces or .13, but 313 bass, the first one I ever caught in a tournament. And that pretty much had me hooked from there. Fished local stuff with my dad. Growing up, we fished a couple different club tournaments. It was one of the best ways to start fishing. Get somebody you're comfortable fishing with, whether it's family or friends, and started fishing the local like club type stuff, and then fished BFLs, which is FLW's like weekend type trail. And I fished BFLs from the time I was 16. That's the youngest you were allowed to fish them at the time, and fished it. And worked my way up through those, made the regional pretty much every year. And then in college, I got to Clemson, still fished the BFLs, but myself and about, I don't know, 6 or 8 other guys started the Clemson bass fishing team. They had like a club before, but it kind of fell apart, and we revamped it, restarted it. And like you said, we were at the very start of what college fishing is now. Everybody always asks, like, man, did you not fish a lot of college tournaments? Well, there really wasn't a lot of national type stuff when I was there, and we didn't get funding from the school at the time. Now it's a lot better, a lot of more opportunities for college anglers out there. And when we were started, you kind of had to pay for it out of your own pocket. So I fished a lot of BFLs and things like that throughout college, and traveled to a few national tournaments, but not too many. And went to, let's see, I think it was 2015, I made the BFL All-American, and I fished the FLW Tour. And then from there, I just kind of worked my way up through the tour, made the Forest Wood Cup the following year, and for the next 4 years, and did well in the Cup. And really just found pretty quick success on the tour, and that's kind of how I worked my way up to where I am today.
So, Brandon, it's not easy. I know when those Forest Wood Cups were, they'd always be in the summertime like our old classics would be from 2005 and prior. Why were you so good in the summer? You probably are maybe a little remorseful that we can't have those Chickamaugas and the Eufalas and the Santees when they were scheduled, but fishing throughout the summer seems like that's going to be just up your alley, and that you're fine with maybe those little tougher events. Why is that? What is your style that translates so well to maybe tougher fishing, those hot, gruesome events?
Yeah, I love like August, September, October, tough condition fishing. I think what it is about it that I like is I tend to underfish stuff. That's going to sound weird, but like in the spring, you fish through an area, down a bank or through a creek channel, whatever, and you catch 1 or 2. Well, a lot of times those are winning places that if you go back through it, you catch 1 or 2, and then turn around and go back through and you catch 1 or 2. Well, the way I fish,
2 or a big one, I'm not sure.
I don't realize that that's that tight spot most of the time because I'm covering so much water all the time. And that style of fishing in really July through September on most southern lakes that's the way you fish, because there's not that many fish in one area. And I think that's why I found success there. Growing up in South Carolina and fishing Georgia some and around here, it's just not that many fish in one place, especially that time of year. So I move really, really fast, and I more try to catch one at a time rather than find schools. And I don't, to be perfectly honest, in the spring, a lot of times I don't realize I found the school when I may have found the winning spot. And it's because I'm moving so fast, and that's a good thing in August. Sometimes it's not a good thing in March. So I think that's why I found a lot of success in August, is just kicking the trolling barrel high and moving fast, catching one at a time and fishing whatever looks good, catching just one fish rather than schools.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I don't want you to get mad at me, okay? We're pretty tight, and I don't want you to be mad at me.
All right.
But after you won 2 Elite Series events last year, you guys got done with Fork, you guys went to Guntersville. After Guntersville, we went up north to the St. Lawrence River and in those smallmouth fisheries, Cayuga, St. Clair, and it didn't go great for Brandon Cobb.
No.
For one, I want to know why it didn't go well for you, and for two, how are you going to change that this year? Because those are going to be not mid to the end of the season, they're probably going to be early to middle of our season compared to what they normally are because of the delays that we've had. So those two questions, what went wrong last year for you? What did you learn from it? And then how are you going to change it this year?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of experience up north. I mean, just fishing maybe 1, maybe 2 tournaments a year since I started fishing professionally. But this year was actually one of those things, yes, I did do terribly. It was a flop of a second half of the year, at least on the northern swings. But it was one of those things, I don't really feel like I missed it in every tournament. It was minor decisions that I made wrong. And like, I found a lot of those fish. The only tournament this year, or this past year, that I feel like I truly had no idea where the bass were was Cayuga. I had no idea of that offshore bite there just because there was so much vegetation and I didn't see it. But St. Lawrence, I found some fish and actually had 20 pounds the second day and lost quite a few big ones. And the first day just made some poor decisions. I tried to make, like, I guess because of my situation in the points and I was doing pretty well, I took some gambles that I probably wouldn't have taken.
That might be a 10-pounder.
This is going to sound kind of stupid, but my theory when it comes to professional fishing, I know everybody's like, I want to win every tournament. My theory is don't suck. And I didn't make decisions up north that I would make for don't suck. I did a lot of stuff where I was trying to win the tournament. Maybe like St. Clair in the AOI, that was later in the year. I found some bigger fish, but all the way on the opposite side of the lake, through all that wind, through the roughest run of the lake, and went all the way across, and had a tough time getting there, and then had even tougher time fishing when I got there. And if I had been paying attention to points, doing things like that, I probably would have never left the area around the ramp, which I had found a lot of those schools of fish, people caught them. It was just poor decisions. I had two options basically after practice, and I would make the wrong one. And I think maybe with a different mindset, I would have made it. I'm not making excuses. Who knows? If I'd been a little farther down in points or not already made the Classic, I would have still made the same decisions and done poorly. But I think I took a little larger gambles than I've kind of made my career doing. I've kind of tried to be consistent ever since I started fishing professionally, and I just made decisions differently than I normally would, and it didn't work out. But who knows? It could have been one of those. Could have won another tournament making a gamble like that. So I don't regret it. It just didn't go well.
Well, I'm glad that you're not fired up and you're mad at me for that. I'm glad that you took that well. But yeah, that's something that I was curious about, because we always see that there's always a guy every year in points that's top 10 halfway through the year, and then they slide down the points. You obviously still double qualified for the Classic, so no shame in that at all. For Brandon Cobb, what would you throw this time of the year? Fans are watching on Facebook right now, and they're tuned in for this early May. It's the first week of May. What are you throwing, and maybe what's always on your front deck of your boat, no matter if you were in the Midwest, the South, the Carolinas, maybe even up north at some of those lakes? What are some staples for Brandon Cobb?
Well, so pretty much every lake you go to in the country in May, you got to have a wacky worm on. I use a Zoom fluke stick. You saw it at Hartwell last year. You got to have a wacky worm on because, number one, a lot of those shad spawn fish, shad are spawning in a lot of parts of the country, they get tough to catch later in the day. You can catch some on that. A fish up eating brim will eat a wacky worm. You got to have it tied on. And then also, I have to have a topwater tied on. I'm in an area where there's a lot of herring, but everywhere in the country there's shad spawning. You saw it at Fork in May last year. Got to have a topwater walking bait on. I throw a Yozuri pencil. We got a 5-inch now, a big walking bait. The 3-hooker is my go-to. It's a 5-inch pencil is my main one. And then the last bait I'm going to have tied on, I've done a lot of videos on it. Me and you talked about it, Ronnie, buzz bait. You got to have a buzz bait with a horny toad on, a toad toter buzz bait with a horny toad. I can skip it under bushes, do about anything with it. That's really have 2 topwaters and a wacky worm, because I'm fishing shallow if it's May. Pretty much in most areas in the South anyway, I'm going down the bank looking for fish eating something, because May, especially the full moon, is one of the bass aren't spawning as much anymore, but there's brim spawn, you got shad spawn, you got a mayfly hatch coming on pretty soon. You got all kind of stuff hatching, spawning that the bass are taking advantage of. So I always keep it pretty simple and keep baits that I like to cover water and shallow water with.
Topwater's often seen as some of those do or die patterns. It makes sense why Brandon Cobb says he goes through an area and catches 1 or 2 and just keeps on trucking with his topwater. So that makes sense. But there's 3 baits Brandon Cobb would throw in early May across the country, that wacky worm fluke stick, and then 2 different types of topwater. Brandon, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Even the tough questions, I like asking those because it's a dive into the mind of an Elite Series pro, one that had great success, 2 Elite Series wins. Maybe you were right in it. You were just getting a little bold trying to win the rest of the Elite Series events by doing something crazy.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. It was poor decision second half, but you can't. I can't take for granted that first half of the year. So the year I'll never forget for sure.
There it is, Brandon Cobb. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us on one of these Elite Series Skypes. Good to see that you're doing well at home, fishing some of those local lakes, and we'll be super excited when we get back on an Elite Series trail and see you on Bassmaster Live.